What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for the finale of building Coruscant in Lego. I know I say this every time, but I can't believe it's done, and I'm already sitting down to film the finale. It went by so fast. I know everyone's excited and you want to see the walkthrough in the mock, but first I got some things to say. I want to set the stage. So the scene that I'm depicting in this mock takes place during the beginning stages of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. There's that giant space battle above Coruscant, and I'm building a section of the battle that takes place on the planet below. So you've got the Galactic Senate building at one side of the mock, and then you have a large droid force slowly pushing their way through the city, trying to take down the Senate building while clones desperately try to push them back. As far as stats go, this mock is comprised of over 100,000 parts, has over 300 minifigs, and took me about a year to complete, being my longest mock project to date. I also want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of you guys who have supported this build series as well as the channel. Whether you liked a video, commented, shared with your friends and family, or donated on a live stream, or just came and hang out on a live stream, I really do appreciate it, and all of that was a huge help in finishing this project. And I want to give a special thank you to my Patreon members. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate your support over on Patreon, and I have a sig fig for each one of my Patreons that is in the mock. If you want to have a sig fig in my next mock, make sure to join the Patreon. I'll put a link to it down below in the comments. You'll also get access to exclusive content, new content, as well as gaming streams. And if you just like the video and you want to drop me a donation, you can always leave me a super thanks, which is located next to the like button. I also want to give a big shout out to my family who helped me move the entire mock from my old place to the new one. I still can't believe we were able to pull that off. And one final shout out goes to Mrs. Coconut, who went above and beyond in helping me out with this mock, whether it was keeping me company while I was building, helping support this whole project, or even doing a little bit of building herself. So thank you for that. But I think that's everything. Let's go take a look at the build. All right, here it is at long last. My Lego Star Wars Battle of Coruscant mock. I'm super happy with how this turned out, and I'm very excited for you guys to see this. But one of the big challenges that I have or run into when I'm doing these final walkthroughs is trying to share all the information and builds that I want to with you guys in a somewhat concise and entertaining manner. That way this video doesn't turn into an hour-long kind of video essay of me pointing out random details. So what I'm going to start by doing is giving you a general overview of the overall story that's happening here. And then I've split this mock into thirds. So we've got first third, middle third, and then the Senate section being the final third. I'm going to go through each one of those after in more detail, kind of show you guys the smaller builds, Easter eggs, and stories. Hopefully doing it in this way will make this whole thing a little bit more organized and flow a lot smoother. So for the overall story, we've got the droid forces punching their way down this main road. They've overwhelmed a lot of the planet's preliminary defenses and have almost made it to the foot of the Senate building, but here the clones managed to muster up a strong defensive force with the help of this mighty ATTE, and they are starting to repulse the droid forces. This middle section is where most of the action is happening, and behind that we've got kind of more like evacuation and rescue stuff happening. So we've got the Senate building here with all kinds of random senators and minifigures fleeing out the three main doors, trying to get to the various ships. On this end, we've got a classic Republic gunship, and then down over here, we've got a Coruscant police gunship. And then on either side of the steps, we've got these little plateaus with the clone mortar stations who are raining down fire on the droids. And then in the middle here, we've got the command station for the Republic forces. We've got Commander Fox here. And of course, you can't have a clone battle mock without having the classic holo table. But that's it for the kind of the overall story. I know that kind of feels like a huge oversimplification, but we'll be going through all of it in more detail. Starting with this first section, which comprises of an apartment complex on this side with some skyscrapers on top. And then over here, we've got a clone base. When I first started designing and building this mock, I realized I was going to have a lot of creative liberty and freedom with what buildings went in, because we don't really know what surrounds the Galactic Senate building. And so I knew one of the things I wanted to include was a clone base, because I've never gotten to build one of these before on a decent scale. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity. And I felt like it would kind of make sense to have some kind of military installation, even if it's kind of like a temporary new one, so close to the Galactic Senate building. As for the general layout, we've got kind of the buildings over here on this side and the motor pool on this side. Obviously, this is just a small cutaway of the mock, so you know this extends off in this direction and then the buildings go off over there in that direction. Because the droids were able to land and advance so quickly, they were able to push into the clone base pretty easily. You can see they've got the clone forces pinned back here in the buildings, although we do have a group of 187th clones right here. trying to lay down some cover fire so that clone gunner can get to one of these tanks and help repulse the droids. Unfortunately, he's only got one option now because that 501st tank took a direct hit from this AAT, which happens to hold the commander droid for the battle. I wanted the buildings to have interiors as well. So this one is actually a barracks. You can see we've got a bunch of bunk beds. Obviously there's going to be no one in here because no one's going to be sleeping during a time like this. And then we've got a large storage locker at the back for them to store belongings. And then over here on this side, we've got an armory that's pretty much cleaned out at this point. You can see there's a mostly empty rifle rack. We've got a helmet shelf right here. And then on either side of the door, we've got a couple more shelves or racks for rocket launchers. And then we've got a few clones in here just preparing, grabbing stuff before they charge out into the action. On the other side of the base, I was less sure what I wanted to do because it was just going to be a lot of empty spaces. But the perfect solution for any kind of empty space or open area in a LEGO Star Wars Moc is fill it full of random crates and storage containers. So I've got all kinds of stuff holding things, whatever you want to imagine could be in there. And then we've got a maintenance crane parked here in the corner. This is kind of like a guard post slash gatehouse. So a clone can sit in here and you can see there's some controls in there so he can operate the door. And you can see this guy was in the process of trying to close the gates to keep the droids out, but unfortunately he got shot, so they were able to spill in. One detail I really liked from this battle is this rocket droid right here. He just launched a rocket into the front ranks of the clones. I did also put numbers on one side of the buildings. I did that just because I felt like it would add to the military base vibe and just felt like something that I should do. So that's pretty much it for the clone base. Moving on to the apartment complex. This is actually one of my favorite buildings in the Moc. I feel like it turned out really good and I was really able to capture my vision with what I wanted this to look like. I knew there had to be some kind of apartment or living spaces, especially this close to the Senate building and, with all the billions of people that live on Coruscant. And here is where I ran into my first large roadblock of the Moc. I had been wanting to include some skyscrapers in the Moc because you can't build a Coruscant Moc without including those iconic rounded skyscrapers. But when I built these, I quickly realized they were nowhere near big enough to be skyscrapers. But at the same time, I also realized I couldn't really build bigger ones or include bigger ones. So I decided to put them in anyways as less of a functional option and more of just like a representation of, what this planet is. And I felt like it still adds to the vibe of Coruscant, makes you think Coruscant, even though these obviously aren't the right height or size. I was very specific when I designed these skyscrapers because I noticed a lot of the tops were very rounded and just the skyscrapers on Coruscant had a very unique architecture to them overall. So I wanted to try and match that as best I could with the shapes and colors and sizes of these buildings. So I've got two built ones and then a destroyed one in the back, but we'll get to that in a second. To cover up the empty space here on the roof, I just put in random vents, just random things. Basically, I tried to imagine like a New York City rooftop, how those things are always crammed full of small buildings, vents, pipes, and other stuff. So I've got all those small details here. I really like how they all came together. Like everything is just such a simple build, but when they're all combined, they come together to create this awesome looking rooftop. We've got a couple of rocket droids here. They're about to destroy this generator, which will knock out power to the building. But we've got Delta Squad here in the back with Sev about ready to take them out. You can see they already got one, blasted its head off as it was flying over to this area. I always put Delta Squad in my Mocs. I know I'm gonna get comments saying they weren't actually here during this battle. I include them as Easter eggs just because I really like Delta Squad and I think it's fun to add them in my Mocs. So they're over here kind of doing their own side mission or side quest. This being an apartment complex, I knew I had to include apartments. So here we've got the main hallway and kind of like one of the doorways to get into the building. So we've got the doors to the individual apartments. We've got apartment 4 through 7 here. I wanted to make these as detailed as possible, so I put a little kind of doorway around each one. And then you've got the keypad to get in right there with a little lantern, and I felt like this would be a good opportunity to put some actual lights into the Moc and help illuminate this hallway a little bit better. In the middle here, we've got an elevator leading up to the second floor, and then we've got all the citizens or people who are living in the apartments trying to get out of here. You can see people have been dropping stuff as they're running away because when your life's at stake, suddenly your worldly treasures aren't as important as they used to be. I do have a couple of clones in here. We've got a shock trooper and a regular grunt trying to maintain order while this guy is covering the citizens as they flee out the door. These two got in a little bit of an argument because this guy bumped into the other guy, knocking his crate over, and this guy's coming to deal with the problem. Now you're probably wondering what the apartments look like, and I have one apartment here on the end where I actually built the whole thing. I didn't do that for all the others just because I felt like I didn't need to and there wouldn't be an easy way to get to those. But this is basically what all of the other apartments look like. So I just went with something simple, nothing too crazy. We've got a TV right here. You can see there they were in the middle of watching A New Hope when everything went down. I've got some more lights in here to help illuminate what's going on, and then I've got a family in the middle of arguing. This guy's like, hey, we gotta go, and the mom's mad because she wants, to bring some more stuff with her, and then this little boy is just wanting to get out of there. I did throw in some random decor stuff, so we've got a little end table there in the back with a lamp on it, and then a couch with some just random, I wanted to do just some random art, and I figured I'd do like Republic colors of dark red and dark blue just because, this is the galactic capital of the world. I'm sure there's all kinds of patriotism here. And then we've got large plants on either side of this doorway that leads off into some back rooms. So that's what the apartments look like. And that's pretty much it for most of the entertainment complex. Oh yeah, I've got a little maintenance ladder here on the back so, people can get up and work on this generator. Last thing I want to show you guys, or two things, are first this destroyed skyscraper. This was supposed to be like a tall finished skyscraper, but I was getting towards the end of the series and I didn't feel like I had the time or the means to be able to complete it. And someone had the great idea of just making it a destroyed skyscraper. So that's what I did. And actually it ties into that gunship over there. So the story is that gunship, was over here flying, and then it got hit, came through, crashed into the side of this building, and then came down there, crashed down into the ground and smashed into that bank. So I tried to build the top of this skyscraper in a way that made it look like, something broke through this half and then the rest of it kind of toppled off this way and then fell down over here. You can see there's even a chunk that hit the corner of this entertainment complex and broke off part of the wall. And then you've got some more debris down here. Then the last thing I want to show you is this sky bridge. So I wanted to have bridge connecting the entertainment and apartment complex. Just for one, it made sense, and I also felt like it would help make this whole mock feel more like an actual city and just feel a little bit more realistic. Very happy with how the bridge turned out. Just pretty simple, clear bridge with some structural supports running along the outside, and then you can see it was smashed in the middle because we have a vulture droid right here that basically flew through the top right there and then crashed down into the entertainment complex, and then ricocheted off the wall and came to a stop over there, which we'll get to in a little bit because there's a fun Easter egg with that. And then right here, we've got some random citizens running away while this clone covers them from the doorway. Now, in between these two structures, we've got the road. There isn't too much going on here because I wanted this to just represent mostly aftermath because the battle's passed on by, but there are a few things I want to point out. First, we've got the remains of a little clone kind of defense post. I like to think, some clones tried to get out and tried to repulse the droids as soon as they could, but obviously they weren't enough. So the barricade, you can see, got destroyed, and then there's the remains of an ATRT next to it with some droids littered in front of it. And then, of course, you've got random more clone parts and droid parts spread throughout the road. I did include a small crater right here, just, some kind of explosion from either droids or clones as they battled in front of the clone base. Over here, we've got another random crater in the sidewalk. I put as many of these in as I could because I wanted the city to feel damaged. I wanted it to feel kind of destroyed because, there's a massive battle going on here. So even though I don't have a story for each of the craters, I felt like they would help kind of combine together to help tell that story of just chaos and destruction. You can see whatever fell over here, went off over here, maybe was a pipe underground, messed up one of these lampposts. Here's a good look at what the front of the apartment complex looks like. I put in these random like jogs and pop-outs or ledges, whatever you want to call them, because I wanted this thing to be as kind of like irregular and interesting as possible. I didn't want to create just a generic rectangle blob of a building. All right, moving on to the second and most action-packed section of the build. This is probably what people are most excited to see because this is where the main battle is. But as for buildings, on this side, we've got an entertainment complex or outdoor mall type of build. And then over here, we've got a bank. While I was designing these two buildings, I kept in mind that people really like interior-based builds, story-driven builds. Whereas, this apartment complex, with the exception of the apartment in the hallway, is mostly just an exterior-based build, something you look at from the outside. And that's the kind of stuff I enjoy building, but I knew people really liked these kinds of builds, so I wanted to include a couple. And as for the bank, you can see the structure of it. It's pretty similar to the apartment complex base because I wanted to keep a cohesive look or style across the whole mock. And then on the top here, we've got another destroyed skyscraper. I kind of ran into a similar situation as I did over there because I got to the end of the series and just wasn't feeling a full skyscraper right here. So I decided to do another base that was on fire. You can see this one got sheared off right here and fell off backwards this way out of the mock because I didn't want it to fall this way and smash anything in the Senate section. I also had to run another set of pipes running along the wall just because I love how this looks. I think this technique is so cool and adds a lot of realism to the buildings. Moving on to the interior. This is the biggest interior of the mock. You can see it's a massive bank lobby. I've got some more lights in here to help illuminate what's going on, and once again I use the same company, Light My Bricks. I've got some LEDs running up into the roof. I got all the lights connected by chains because I wanted them to look kind of like chandeliers, and you can see they're kind of askew and crooked, but I kept them like that on purpose because that gunship smashed into the bank wall, and you know, there's just overall massive battle going on. So I felt like probably, you know, the lights could be knocked askew and stuff. And speaking of the gunship, you can see it just smashed its way through the front wall right there into the waiting area. There's a bunch of rubble at the base. It even knocked over a little fountain that I had built, and then we've got some seats over here at the side. As for what's going on in the bank, I've actually got a bank robbery in progress. I found these guys on Bricklink. I don't remember what exactly they are. I think they're like AIM agents or something. But I just felt like they matched the vibe of a bank robber perfectly. They got matching uniforms, armor, face masks, night vision goggles, just heavy duty guys looking to do some heavy duty jobs. So I got 4. This guy right here is guarding the prisoners. You can see we've got Wat Tambor, who was, you know, trying to get that bag, Mr. Greedy Guy. And then we got a couple of bank employees right here on the ground. And then I did have some bank security. Fortunately, they were both killed. There's one right there, and then I think the other guy's over there guarding the door. I built a giant hole in the middle of the door to make it look like the bank robbers had blasted their way through, and you can see there's shards of glass littering the floor. And then up above that, we've got one of the only designs or decorations in the bank. It's just a diamond looking thing with a Republic logo in the center. I added that because I didn't like how solid gray the front walls were, and so I wanted some kind of design or color change there to help break up the monotony. Here in the back, I got a couple statues. You can't see the other one because it's on the front side of the pillar, but I just felt like, you know, high society, rich person banks got to have some kind of cool statues. On either side of the bank, we've got the different teller stations. I went to great lengths to make sure these look detailed and realistic, even though I knew this wouldn't be a huge portion of the build. We've got little lights to signify if the station's ready or not. We've got some little glass panels with a little space underneath. That way the employees can slide out the money or credits or whatever, but people can't get in through there. Unfortunately, the bank robbers just decided to make their own entry point. So you can see they blasted a hole in that wall right there. And then this guy and that guy are in the process of taking out all the credits, gold, whatever it is that was stored in the bank. Back there on the other side of the bank, we've just got some small offices for, you know, people to meet with employees, figure out financing. I don't know, just, you know, doing general bank stuff. I used these masonry bricks and stuck the kind of more simple side facing out just because I felt like it made a cool design and just made these walls look a little bit fancier. I do even have more detailing on the insides of the teller stations. I've got little seats where they're sitting, someone dropped their lunch, and then we've got little computers and stuff for them to do their job. On this side of the bank, we've got a little plaza or a common area. This came to be just because I needed more space between the steps and the bank. That way people would have enough room to come over here, come up the steps, or be able to come down this way. But this open space gave me an opportunity to throw in this little bench and garden area. One of my favorite things to build in Lego are outdoor nature scenes. And unfortunately, with Coruscant being a planet-wide city, there wasn't really many opportunities for that here. But with this little open space here, I decided to throw in a little greenery and just kind of, you know, pay homage to those types of builds that I love doing. Over here on this side of the bank, we've got a little alleyway, and this is home to the #1 most requested Easter egg in the mock, and that is the Captain Fordo stand against the super battle droids on Coruscant. For anybody unfamiliar, this scene depicts Captain Fordo, a clone, holding off a group of super battle droids in like a crater or hole in the ground until some clones are able to come and reinforce him. I had a lot of fun building this crater. At first, it was a very daunting challenge, but once I started, I realized it was pretty simple. Just I needed to combine a bunch of chunks of brick that was connected together to make it look like the road had been broken up, and then in between those larger chunks, I just stuck small cheese slopes, tiles, plates, and other things like that. And then when all these things were combined, it created a really cool looking crater in the ground. This angle from across the street gives you the best look at what's going on here because you can better see Fordo and you can see all the pieces of rubble that are piled up in front of the crater, making it look almost like he's in some kind of like a little fort with barricade walls in front of him. The Captain Fordo minifig is a custom one that I decaled myself. I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. And then behind the Fordo Easter egg, we've got just some random dude in a hover taxi speeding away from the battle, almost running over that dude. Now, moving on to my least favorite building in the mock, the entertainment complex. It's not that I don't like how it turned out, it wasn't terribly interesting to me. There isn't a lot of like battling going on inside, and there are just a lot of interior, internal components that we'll get to that were just kind of a pain to build. But starting with the outside, I've got a couple of Arabish signs. This is supposed to say welcome, but the sign wasn't long enough to fit the E, so doesn't matter. You can't tell. It still looks cool. And then we've got another sign over here that doesn't actually say anything. I just, wanted to add a little bit more color. Down here at the foot of the entertainment complex, we've got another giant crater. And then the one, the only, Commander Thorn. A lot of people were really sad that I wasn't going to include him in the mock, so I decided to include him as one of my Patreon members. Here, another couple Patreons coming in behind him. You've probably noticed by now there are some random out-of-place clones in the mock, like captains and other Phase 1 clones. These guys represent my wonderful Patreons. So here's a group of 3 of them right here charging out of the entertainment complex to support this force over here. Next to them, we've got another fun Easter egg. This is a camera crew filming the battle. This is like a spoof of a camera crew working with George Lucas to film the prequels. I did this for the first time with my Utapau mock, and I thought it was a lot of fun, so I decided to bring it into Coruscant as well. Moving on to the side of the entertainment complex, we once again visit the Vulture Droid crash site. This happens to be another frequently requested Easter egg. This is Mace Windu riding the Vulture Droid. This was another Easter egg to the 2003 Clone Wars cartoon, where Mace Windu hijacks a Vulture Droid and rides it around. I wasn't going to have any ships flying around the mock, but I knew I was going to have this Vulture Droid crash site, so I decided to turn it into a version of that Easter egg. So I guess we can pretend Mace Windu was flying around on this Vulture Droid, and then it came down here and crashed, and he hopped off and has joined the battlefield right here. You can see he's force pushing this little group of droids. As for the crash site, I had a lot of fun once again building it. This was another one of those battle damage sections that was a challenge, but just super rewarding to build. I even got to build a little concaved section of the entertainment complex wall using a Lego net piece. I connected a bunch of tiles to it and was able to build them at an angle like that, make it kind of look like the metal had been pushed inward. And then a chunk of the road that's been broken and busted as the Vulture Droid crashed into it and scraped across the top, and you can see it pushed a bunch of rubble up in front of it and then came to a stop right here. This is not my design. This is a custom Vulture Droid. You can get the instructions for it on Brick Vault. Moving on to the interior of the entertainment complex, you can see there is a lot going on in here. So I ringed the entire edge of this with shops. There's a little sign up above each one that represents what it's selling. We've got a pizzeria right here, a drink shop, and then a blue milk. And just in case Luke happens to stop by someday, we've got a green milk stand. And then over here, we've got just, alien berries, bread. And then this one was supposed to be a meat shop, but you can see it got crushed. The entertainment complex has a second story running along the top of the wall. You can see you've got some more tables and chairs in here. And then in the center right here, we've got a Republic logo. Over here, you've got some random mob boss being escorted by his bodyguards trying to flee the city. And then here's the entrance to the Sky Bridge, where you used to be able to get to the apartment complex. And then over here, here's another look at that broken chunk of the skyscraper that came down and destroyed part of the entertainment complex. And this is how you get from the second story down to the ground floor. Over here on this side, unfortunately, this set of stairs collapsed and there's a little alien from Toy Story pinned under it. And this right here is actually Mrs. Coconut Sigfig. She is trying to rescue the little guy and pull him to safety. And on either side, we've got another Arabish sign. One of these says food and the other says drink, but at this point, I don't even remember which is which. And then in the middle, we've got the main common area where some more tables have been set out and chairs for people to eat. And then in the center is this nice little fountain. I wanted to have a little bit of a different texture on the inside of this little circle, so I switched from regular tile to this pattern of light bluish gray and dark bluish gray ingot pieces, and I just really like the way that it looks. It makes me feel like it's kind of like a brick floor or something like that. And then here in the center, we've got a little statue of a Jedi with some water around it. There's also a smaller secondary exit from the entertainment complex that leads out into this other plaza that basically matches the first one, and then up to the steps of the Senate building. That way, senators can come grab a bite to eat or hang out on their lunch break. All right, finally, the boring building stuff is out of the way, and we can get to the main attraction, the battle. So we've got droid forces over here, clone forces over there, starting with the droids. I've got a whole horde of droids. I think I have around 140 battle droids in total in this mock. This is where the majority of them are grouped. They are taking some heavy hits here along the front line, which, kind of makes sense. That's where most of the damage is. We've got a custom droideka right here designed by Grinding Bricks. Another one of his beautiful designs right here
Really happy with how those turned out. And then, you know, you just got more droids piling in behind them. We do have an explosion right here. They took a hit from the mortar that's stationed over there on that plateau. But amidst all the action, we've got this one guy who's just had it. He's threw down his gun and he's taking a little break. He's got an oil can snack. Providing heavy support behind the droids, we've got another AAT. These weren't designed by me. These are Mr. Idler's custom designs. They are just absolutely beautiful. Actually, he designed the Trade Federation version, so this is a recolor and partial redesign by Rich Boy J. So shout out to both of those guys for making this beautiful creation possible. Now, in between the two forces, acting almost like a barrier, we have this crashed gunship. We've got another crater right here, and you can see there the remains of droids. A couple got smashed underneath the gunship. I like to think that this pilot, or these pilots as they were crashing, tried to help out their fellow brethren as best they could and rammed into the front lines and almost created a little bit of a wall or barrier on the clones' left flank to help protect them a little bit. The gunship itself is in pretty bad shape. You can see one of the pilots is in the process of escaping, but unfortunately the other guy isn't going to make it. Moving on to the clone side of things, we have the front line of troops right here, taking cover behind these cement barricades and some other crates, basically just throwing up whatever they can to get behind so they can fire at the droids from, you know, relative safely. Up here in the very front, we've got Master Yoda about to do some work, and then I guess it's take your son to work day because we got little Grogu behind him. If anybody's wondering how on earth I got so many shock troopers and phase 2 grunts, I decaled pretty much all of them with the exception of a few, some of which were decaled by a friend of mine who was kind enough to decal this Commander Fox, and then 3 shocks. I'll put a link to his Instagram down below in the comments. Definitely go show him some love and support for those awesome minifigs. And if you're interested to see how I sourced the clones and decaled them, I'll put a video showing how I did that up at the top of this one. And then the centerpiece of the whole battle, we have this beautiful brick vault ATTE. This is honestly one of my favorite pieces in my entire collection, and I definitely want to build a second one this summer. It's providing basically life-saving support to the entire army here. You can see its main cannon's just gone off and is about to just demolish that AAT. Got a phase 2 gunner stationed here in the back, and then of course we got the pilot in there with another guy back behind him. On either side of the ATTE, you can see we've got fresh troops running to join the battle. They've just been deployed by gunships in the Senate building. I honestly wish I had more to say about this section so I could show it to you guys for longer, but just don't really know what else to say. You will get a longer and better look at this whole section once the cinematic drops next week, though. At last, we've arrived at the final third of the Moc, the Galactic Senate Building. I split this one into 2 smaller sections. So we've got the stairs and plateaus on this side and then the building over here. When I first started designing this whole area and just thinking about how I wanted it to look, I knew I was going to have a massive and imposing set of stairs leading up to the Senate Building because you can't have a build like this in your Moc and then have it down at the same level of everything else. You got to raise it up, you got to show it off. And so I built this massive set of stairs. I made each step 2 studs deep and then each one 2 plates tall, so bigger than I normally do, and I think it paid off because this matches the tone and just vibe that I was going for perfectly. And honestly, this little strip right here of plateaus and stairs is my favorite portion of the build, and I kind of want to keep it built for a while. In between the steps, we've got this massive tunnel. This actually came about because while I was building this, I realized this main road came down here and just butted directly into the steps, and that just didn't really make sense to me logistically. That road needed somewhere else to go, so I ended up creating this tunnel, and then the road goes down underneath the Senate building into a giant parking garage where, you know, senators, maintenance, and other people can park and get up into the Senate building. So that was kind of nice how all that was able to tie together. On the top, we've got the forward command post with Commander Fox, a Senate Guard captain, and then another ranked clone right here, all conversing over a holo table, because like I said, you can't have a clone battle without a holo table. Right now, they're trying to figure out a good counteroffensive to push back the droids and get them off the planet's surface. Behind them, we've got a shock trooper standing guard and the legendary Clone 99, another one of my Patreons. I wasn't sure what else to put up here just because I figured this would be a pretty hastily built command station, so I just have a few random crates and canisters. And then lining each side of this area, we've got some flags. There are flags in front of the actual Senate building, and at first I thought that was a little weird and had no plans to include any of my own, but people talked me into it. I thought about the idea and was sold on it eventually, so I included these in, and plus they add a nice pop of color to all of this light gray. Now, on the ends of the steps, we've got these plateaus. These plateaus came about because I realized just having steps running this whole length of the build wouldn't look as cool. Plus, I wanted to include some statues, which once again were included in the actual Senate building, and I didn't really have anywhere to put them. So these plateaus came to be, and I couldn't be happier with how they look. Matching everything perfectly are these statues. I just loved the level of detail with these. I thought about using a minifig statue, but it didn't give me the look that I needed. And these statues were just what I needed. This design is actually made by the Brick Wiz and some of his friends, and he also gave me some ideas for the buildings in the clone base. So shout out to him for those. I've got 6 statues on each plateau. You can see this inner statue was destroyed by these clones. That way they could set their mortar up and, fire on the droids without accidentally blowing up the statue in themselves. The mortar station is pretty simple. You just got your common mortar right here. There's a clone in the process of loading in a round, and then we've got another guy behind him directing him, and he's being told where to fire via that little hologram. Now, moving on to the Senate building. Where to start with this beast? This is one of the most frustrating and complex builds I have ever attempted, but I'm very, very happy with how it looks. Very pleased with the shapes and structure I was able to produce. And probably the first thing you'll notice is this doesn't look like the Senate building. That's because pretty early on, pretty much since the beginning, I knew I wasn't going to be able to do an exact recreation. So instead I built a representation and took attributes and things from the Senate building I liked and stuck them in here, and even a few of my own, like these giant pillars. The actual Senate building doesn't have any pillars, but I thought these would look really cool and just match that imposing vibe. Plus, they were vital in being able to hold up the roof. You can see the entire roof in the front rests on the top of them. In the middle of the Senate building, we've got a giant window. That way, all the senators can look down on their lunch break, surveying Coruscant, pretending like their whole government isn't being run by a Sith Lord. Hiding up on top of the roof, we've got a familiar figure, General Grievous, with a small squad of rocket droids. He's in the process of charging down the roof, where he's going to jump down onto this plaza area right here and kidnap Chancellor Palpatine. I know this isn't exactly how it happened in canon, but this was the best way I could figure out how to include both General Grievous and Chancellor Palpatine in some fun and interesting way that kind of made sense. At the bottom of the Senate building, we've got 3 main entrances, and this is where the minifigures are flooding out. You can see this side, we've got some random senators and a droid trying to get to this Coruscant police gunship. I put Senate guards on either side of the doorway to kind of help corral the senators and keep them in an organized fashion. That way the clones can try and keep this front area as clear and organized as possible so they can get the gunships in and out in an efficient manner. Back behind this police Coruscant gunship, we've got another group of Patreons on their way to come support the Senate guards. This is the first time I was able to include a Coruscant police gunship in one of my large-scale mocks, which makes sense because outside of Coruscant, where are you going to use it? But really happy to be able to use this. This is LEGO's official model. Like I said, the middle entrance is home to the one, the only, the Senate, Chancellor Palpatine. He is angrily storming out of the Senate building to figure out what's going on here at the forward command post, with a couple of his elite Senate guards flanking him. Then we've got General Master Stas Ali, I think is how you say her name, trying to convince him to go evacuate with the rest of the people. The middle doorway doesn't have any Senate guards trying to keep order, so you can see minifigures are just running out in all directions. Over here, it's pretty much the same story. We've got a gunship evacuating more senators and people, but on this side, I've got the Queen Amidala minifigure. I know this isn't the right minifig. She's not in this movie. This isn't what Padme looks like at this point in Star Wars. But I wanted to include this minifigure anyways because it's my favorite LEGO Star Wars minifig. Plus, she just fits the vibe of the Senate building so well. Down here on this plateau, we've basically got the same thing unfolding. We've got the broken statue in the middle for the mortar. This one, however, is in the process of firing while this guy gets another round. And then his spotter is actually over here on the steps with the binoculars trying to get a visual on what's going on. Then we've got some random citizens running up the steps trying to hitch a ride on the gunship. And the gunship is a custom build designed by M5 Builds on Instagram. The hardest thing for me when building this building was trying to get the curved sections down. I ended up going with a pattern of cylinders and regular brick to get the brick section rounded. The panel section was even harder. There's just a mess of ball joints behind this, which allowed me to kind of create the right shape with some panels. And then I basically mirrored that panel section up here on top with the roof. I know it's not perfect, but it all came together pretty nicely and I'm happy with the finished result. If you're wondering where the rest of the roof is, I decided not to build it because on the one hand, I wasn't sure that this would be able to structurally hold the entire roof, and I just didn't know how good it would look repeating this pattern of panels over and over again, so I just left it open like this, and you guys can fill in the rest with your imagination. Honestly, I'm just scratching the surface when it comes to talking about this Senate building. If you want to see my whole process for it, why I made the design choices I did and how it all came together, check out my weekly building updates. There's a playlist on my YouTube channel, Building Coruscant and Lego, that has all the updates. In those updates, you'll get to see this entire mock coming together. Well, I can't believe it, but I think I have finally finished showing you guys everything I want to. It feels like I should redo portions and, refilm a lot of things just because it's so hard to just do this massive mock justice. But I got to get this out at some point. I can't keep refilming, and as long as you guys were able to look at this and enjoy it with me, that's all that matters. Even though we are done with the walkthrough, there are a few more things to talk about before we wrap up the video.
Man, I can't believe it's over. The finale is finally out. It's done. I feel like I can really start to relax and celebrate now. Because I couldn't be happier with this mock. I couldn't be prouder. I really pushed myself and did something that I wasn't sure that I could do with this project. And even though it wasn't exactly what I envisioned at the beginning, especially in regards to the Senate building, I feel like I was able to capture the overall spirit and vision, which was to just build the biggest, most impressive Coruscant mock that I could. And don't worry, this isn't your last time seeing Coruscant. I've got lots more videos planned with it, from cinematics to price breakdowns to things that I would do differently if I were to build this again. And the end of this chapter marks the beginning of a new one. I have a brand new building series coming to the channel, and if you thought this battle was big, wait till you see what I've got coming next. I'm gonna be announcing that project within a few weeks, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But that wraps up this video. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about the mock and this whole thing down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time. But until then, happy building.